Good evening, everyone. This is Tala with Drive-thru Therapy. Thank you guys so much for joining me tonight on another episode. And as always, I'm grateful for your support. And tonight's a very special night, actually. I had a little scare earlier in the evening. I went to a store to attempt to purchase a gift for a birthday gift for a friend of mine. And I had misplaced my purse in the store. If you have experienced this, it's tremendous, right? It's a significant loss, and you feel so exposed in a way, and you don't know what to do. What's really great is everybody came rushing in, and they all wonderfully assisted me in the store. And there was 3-4 women that were just looking for me, and they were just checking everything for me. And they just understood the feeling. They understood the feeling of that kind of loss. And you could see their empathy and their actions and the generosity. They understood that feeling. And it was the coolest thing. I think if I didn't even find that purse, it would have still been fine because of how much beauty I saw earlier tonight. One person, it was a particular young lady, and she was helping me look for that purse. She's been looking for me for a while, and she said, you might need to go home and get some rest. You've been looking for hours. And I said, well, I don't have my phone. I don't have my phone numbers. I don't have my money. I don't have anything at all. And she said, let me get you an Uber to take you home. And this stranger got me an Uber, and I went home, and luckily I was able to find an old device that found my new device, and I was able to access my phone and find my purse, which was fantastic. But I'm so glad I got to see all of that humanity is right and bright. And when we see a person in distress, we can empathize with them and go to help them. And they don't want anything. On the contrary, I got an Uber ride all the way home, from a young lady. You can tell that she just didn't, she didn't have much. So, and she's like, oh, the Uber ride is $6. She was so happy. And I was like, thank you so much. And I knew this was a lot for her. And she sent me home. Oh man, that experience was tremendous. I've had so many of these experiences in my life where people empathized in a situation where I needed help, and they came and they helped. Now the help did not look like I wanted it to right away, right? Which sometimes could have made me dismiss it before. But today I find the beauty, whether I found that purse or not, friends, I find the beauty in the fact that all these wonderful people came and were concerned and helped me through it. It's just, that's the beauty of humanity. Sometimes we're lied to. We think that all that humanity is what you see on TV. But look, that's not what we live every day. What we live every day is something like what happened to me at the store. And all these people were just generous and kind with their time and their concern, and helped me look for my purse. And I'm telling you, even if the outcome wasn't that I found that purse, because I found it way later, it was still a wonderful thing to see all that generosity from people. So I'm so grateful to deliver this message, and it's a ripple effect. I know that their kindness towards me will also produce me having kindness towards another, and so on and so forth. And it's a ripple effect, as is pain. If I harm another, I am more than likely to have them cause to harm another, and so on and so forth. And this is a ripple effect. So I want to be as careful as possible. I can't catch it every time, but I want to be as careful as possible to have the ripple effect I want to have. And tonight, for all those individuals that have helped me along the way, the ones that may not have been memorable by their name or their face, they are surely memorable by their courage, their generosity, and their kindness. I definitely remember that. So I will not forget you. And I carry you with me always, especially on those dark times where I think, man, what humans do to humans is unkind. I'll remember you. So thank you for this memory, and thank you for being here tonight with me. Let's move on to this topic. So tonight is about victim mentality. And it is not a character flaw, friends. The victim mentality is a thinking process. And interestingly enough, what happened to me today earlier, I could have definitely used that as like, oh my God, why do I always get punished? Why does this ever happen to me? Why? And if my mind went that route, that would have been a victim mentality right away. I would have not asked for help. I wouldn't have even received other people's help for the most part, because I would have been too much in my head being, a victim. So what is a victim mentality? And how does it interfere in our interaction with others, attachments, our way of solving problems, the way we feel about ourselves? What the heck is that? I want to normalize that for you. So this way, you know what it sounds like, what it looks like, whether it's in you or in another. And it's so easy to dismiss, but you'll know, because the victim mentality always feels like, they basically lack gratitude. They always feel like the world is out to get them. They blame external sources for how they feel and how they act and how they respond. They're often feeling helpless, helpless in most situations. Interestingly enough, a victim mentality also has an aggressive side. When you don't agree with a person who has a victim mentality, they automatically think that you're attacking them, and they turn it on to you real quick. So let's say you confront them about sometimes their behavior, their not so great behavior, but you just confront them, even if you're so careful, in the gentlest way. If they even get a whiff of the fact that they, did something that they're embarrassed about or that they don't want to take accountability for, most of the time they are going to quickly go under attack. Like, you're attacking me. Why are you saying this? I never said that. And it would look like gaslighting, but it's not just gaslighting. It's gaslighting after you confront them about their behavior. And it turns into a victim. They're self-victimizing as a way to cope with difficult situations. They're self-victimizing. I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but it's good to mention it again. The more aggressive side usually complains, gets angry quickly. A self-victimizer that's like really loud, and we all know her in that society, is called a Karen. If you ever go on YouTube and look up just like Karen videos, they're probably the most fascinating, I think. They're full of different people. I think some of them are acted out, but they're great actors. And some of them are real people that, and they're usually women. It's not that men don't act like Karens. I guess we accept them more as in the masculine world than we do as a feminine in the masculine world. We don't accept her being a victim. But a man acting in the way I'm about to tell you, that's fine. So let's say there was a video on YouTube, and it was about this woman who I guess was really angry at one of the people that parked. They might have cut her off or something. She took some of the stuff from her grocery bag, some items, and she spilled like milk all over the car. And then she took some kind of white powder, put it right on top of that car. It was like just ridiculous. But the idea is that this anger is just so much like she thinks that she was just attacked by individuals, that they just did this on purpose and they're out to get her. Now, I know you're thinking, how is she acting self-victimizing when she's that aggressive? But trust me when I tell you, self-victimizing mentality, you'll see them both ways. when I used to work in jail and in prison, a lot of victim mentality. And everybody's like, what? Tala, in prison, in jail, those people usually take advantage of other people's helplessness. But, I just don't buy it. But trust me when I tell you, a large population of the forensic population is in fact self-victimizing, especially if they have like a prison mentality or they're usually blaming the system, right? They're the victim of the system. I've never done anything wrong, but it was just the cops that when they arrested me, this is what they said, this is what they did. And that's a common response that I usually heard from inmates. It doesn't matter what they're being charged with. They're often blaming others for that, for that instead of taking accountability. So victim mentality is really sneaky. It's really sneaky. And we can all, to some extent, relate to that idea of being attacked or being offended. But a victim mentality is constant. It's relentless. It's that we don't confront anything in a victim mentality. We don't usually even problem solve. A lot of times it's like helplessness is the coping. So we could kind of avoid making decisions where it ends up being so detrimental. And then we start to blame others because we didn't make decisions or that there were consequences to our lack of decision making, and we get those consequences. So for example, let's say I forget to pay the water bill, and I forget it and I forget it and forget it, and finally they cut it off. Now I'm angry at the utility institution, I guess, that cut it off. I'm ready at I'm really mad at them. I'm angry at them, but I'm not really taking accountability for the fact that I didn't pay my bills. And what would be the consequence of that? It would be to, shut my water. I mean, I'm not paying for the utility. So it makes sense, right? But not to this self-victimizing mentality. Usually it's anything that when there are consequences delivered based on their action or lack of action or decision making, most of the time it is the immediate response is the world is out to get me and there are people trying to hurt me and it's not fair. Oh, that's a common one for a self-victimizer. Usually they constantly perceive the world as unfair. There's injustice everywhere and they look for it. They look for the injustice everywhere. That's why the Karens are ready to snap. That's what they're after. And it's like a dopamine hit. They react on it, feels good, it feels a relief. But I assure you, right after there's a demoralization that comes after reacting from that place of anger and impulsivity. You've misrepresented yourself in that moment, but we're not seeing it that way. So a self-victimizing has this kind of polar opposite looking things, but they're the same thing. Behaviors that are helpless, that are avoidant. And then we have one that are over confrontative because they are reacting to being attacked consistently. And both can exist even in the same person, friends. Both can exist in the same person. But again, they're so subtle. They're so subtle that we're not even, I think each person has a bit of self-victimization if they don't be careful. But I'm really talking to the individuals that are constantly in complaint mode, constantly criticizing, constantly thinking things should be a certain way. But in reality, they don't have to be anyway. They are just the way they are. But a person who's self-victimizing cannot see something as it is. They will only see it as it should be, which is going to cause them frustration. And they're going to be inflexible. They only see that their needs were not met and things that didn't come out the way they wanted. And then that is what they're going to react on. And that's all they see. So I want us to empathize with this population, and I want us to be compassionate and patient with this population. But I want us to do it in a special way, because a person who's self-victimizing is draining. They're energetically draining because of their constant complaints and and criticism of the world. Constantly. They're going to be draining. So it's not talking to a person who can see gratitude and see good things happening, most of the time, a person who self-victimizes often sees how they've been duped in some way or didn't get what's owed to them. There's a sense of entitlement that also precedes their responses and their thought process. They also consistently expect to be rescued in some way. So they will place people in certain roles that they should have rescued them. And because they did not rescue them in some way, they're going to get angry at them. So for example, let's say I am out with a bunch of friends and all of a sudden my best friend, which is not the case at all. Okay. This would not happen. If you know my best friend, you would know this would not happen. But let's say, somebody told her something and she got offended, right? And then right away she would be angry at me for some reason for not rescuing her, or standing by her, even though this wasn't something that I've noticed or even need to participate in. It was between her and another person. And so I don't have to see it the same way she does. But let's say she blames me for it and says, well, you should have stood up for me. You should have said something. You're my best friend. Again, she self-victimizes in this case. And it eventually results in me not rescuing her. And of course, I'm the bad guy, right? So again, lack of accountability there. And you'll see this loud and proud, this kind of sneaky way of self-victimizing, that people need to either rescue, or the next thing that you'll notice is that you have to play a certain role. So for example, again, it goes back to rescuing to some extent. Let's say I go into my class and I have a professor, and this professor starts to grade me in a way that I don't want to be graded. The professor's giving me some really not good grades. Instead of me taking a look at okay, what am I doing wrong? Or, okay, let me go speak to that professor. I will automatically start to discredit that professor in my head. I'll just say, well, look, he's not perfect. He shows up late. He does this. And I start to take them apart in my head. Right. And then I think, he or she is not this perfect professor. How could they do this to me? How could they confront me about this? And my grade could be so low when they're not even that perfect, And so they're kind of going to blame the professor. And again, this professor should be perfect because they're my professor and they're a professor, So they always want people to play their role with perfections, although self-victimizing individuals are not perfect themselves, but yet they want others to play that role of perfection, but they will not hold themselves necessarily to that standard. So this will also show up, let's say at work, if I was self-victimizing, I would react in a way where I might expect that my boss needs to always be fair, treat me the same as everybody else, and treat me, I'll have all these fabulous expectations. But if my boss happens to give a raise to someone else or to promote someone else, I will automatically start to villainize them in my head. And I'll say they should be fair and they should be they should be equal with everybody, and they should be, and they should be, and they should be. And why aren't they? And I'll tell other people about how they should be, and I'll just villainize them and self-victimize in the process, and eventually that results in reactive behaviors or whatever the case is. That's also demoralizing for that self-victimizing individual. The self-victimizing thinking pattern is inflexible in that way. It holds us back because I am hyper-focused on that the world is attacking me, and I play the constant role of a victim in some way. Now, notice I gave you examples that are so subtle you would think, well, how can a person be self-victimizing in that? But trust me, think about what I'm saying. It's very subtle. It doesn't have to be in your face self-victimizing. It has a range of responses that people might even think it's normal. So when does this self-victimizing start, or how is it formed? like I said earlier, self-victimization is a coping skill. It's not a character trait or a personality trait. It's a coping skill. This is usually developed early on during childhood. If the child was consistently invalidated, not given attention, maybe constantly told that they're wrong from kind of an oppressive parent who always had to have their way. And so the child at that point learns that helplessness is a way to cope and to survive a family that has a very authoritative, oppressive feel or vibe. So the child responds to it by being helpless. When the child does not have an appropriate amount of control in their life, in their childhood, a lot of times that's when they just kind of increase the level of helplessness as a way of coping. So when a child is chronically dismissed and neglected and feels very little control over their life, they start to think, I don't matter, and they start to think I don't have any control at all. And those beliefs are ingrained in their mind that nobody cares about me. I'm not important enough. I don't matter. And those are the automatic presumptions later on that lead to problems for those individuals, because that's where they get it from. Constantly, automatically assuming that I am not important. And a self-victimizer consistently thinks that they're unimportant, which is kind of the chip on that shoulder, having to prove their importance and that they really matter. And that's the excessive need to do it, right? Like that lady who's throwing the milk and the groceries all over that car because she's angry because they took her parking spot or whatever. It's like saying, I don't matter. And she's making all these assumptions and presumptions of what's happening. It's not necessarily the case. They're not telling her that. She's the one who's coming up with all that in her head, that she's not important. And that's the chip that's on that shoulder for a person who self-victimizes. Also, if the child during childhood is never encouraged to problem solve independently, then they start to internalize their helplessness because the parent, again, is dominant. And so they're constantly trying to control and taking over. And they're so overprotective, and they rescue the children without letting them kind of come up with a solution and feel a sense of autonomy and self-trust. Also, another important factor that results in childhood that also impacts the self-victimizing mentality is being bullied again, or abused by the parent. Again, we're forcing the child into powerlessness. And in this case, they automatically start to believe that something along the lines of bad things happen to me and I can't stop them. And so again, here's the theme of the powerlessness, even from being bullied, right? So whether it's overly protective or bullied and humiliated, I'm removing the sense of agency and independence from the human being, the child. At this point, the child now believes themselves to be helpless to the world, which can result in either trying to prove that they matter, which is, again, it's just not useful in the way we're doing it. And then you have the other, which is completely kind of laying down and submitting to all the helplessness, and people are attacking me and I'll never get what I want. And it may not be resulting in outrageous demonstrations of anger, but it will be a way of complaining and passive aggressiveness. It just will not bring a great quality of life for that individual, and it will drain people around them because nobody wants that negativity. Nobody wants that negativity around them, so people will avoid them. It's very sad, the outcomes resulting from an individual who's self-victimizing in this chronic way is very sad. It's very sad. and I want people to, again, have the compassion for it. I kind of talked about it earlier, but I'm going to go ahead and talk about it a little bit more. What do we do with those individuals? How do we help them? Well, we can't make them change, right? But what we can do is we can, when we're talking to them, help them have more a sense of agency in their communication. So we say things like, what can you control about this? For example, what would you like to do about this? Kind of putting it back in their hand to make decisions, to problem solve, instead of just complain, but they do not come up with a solution. That's a very dominant behavior of a person who self-victimizes. So when we speak to a person who does that, usually we want to be compassionate, like I said, empathetic, but also so you don't have to just kind of sync with their energy and drown. We want you to just remember that they are the ones that are going to be solving their problems, and that you can send it back to them to problem solve and to think about what they want to do and what they can control and what they can't control. You just ask those questions. What can you control about it? What would you like to do about it? Just like that. You're sending it back to them. It'll help a lot. So this way you don't drain your energy with the person that you love who self-victimizes, and they can demonstrate and strengthen more of this skill of problem solving and becoming more independent and feeling a sense of power innately without having to prove it. You know, like, look, I have the ability to make decisions. I have the ability to correct things. I don't just say that the world is out to get me. I'm a player in this world. I make decisions, and I don't need to wait to be rescued in any way. So I hope this has helped you guys look at this very important feature or coping skill that many of us have. And gratitude is a big cure for this population. If you want to work on it within yourself, I need you to work on gratitude, finding the beauty in things instead of how things should be, rather just accepting them as they are and finding the beauty in what they are as they are. I hope that makes sense. And that will help us work on that even more and more and more. Taking accountability for our own thought patterns and understanding where they came from. The people are not out to get us. We're not psychics. We don't know what they're thinking. They're not out to use us or take advantage of us. They're not out to discriminate against us. These are all not things that are necessarily true, because we do not know what another person's thinking. But if I'm just automatically reactive to that, you might be a person who self-victimizes. So make sure that you're aware. And even if a person is unkind to you, you still have the power to make important decisions that provide relief without internalizing that helplessness or reacting to it in a very impulsive, reactive way. I hope that makes sense. Okay. I love you guys. I want us to use this information wisely. We do not harm another person with this information. We want to see it kindly, whether it's through within us, we admit its presence and we work on it every day, or in another person, we love them through it. But we stop giving and rescuing, and we become more of leaving the person to deal with managing their emotions as they want to manage them, and problem solve and apply some agency in their life. I don't have to be the rescuer. That's it. That's all I got. I hope this helps. I'm sending you love and light. Baha'u'llah said, "A thankful person is thankful under all circumstances. A complaining soul complains even in paradise." This has been an episode of Drive-thru.